You fool! Warren is dead.
Part 9. Carnage on Market Street. At first, it sounded like fireworks. A sharp crack split the air, followed by another and another. Betsy flinched instinctively, her shoulders drawing up as the noise bounced off the shop fronts ahead. "What was that?" Rose whispered. They were close to the turn-off for Buckingham now, by the charity shop with its flickering tube lights. The sky above had faded to a dirty blue-grey, the last of the day bleeding away. Another sound followed, an unmistakable sound. A scream. It came from further up the street, shrill and raw. Alan stopped dead. "Shit," he mouthed. A crowd surged into view ahead of them. People spilled out of doorways, faces pale, movements jerky and uncoordinated. "Move!" someone yelled. "Back! Get back!" A man stumbled, fell to his knees. Another dragged him upright by the collar and half carried him away. Somewhere glass shattered, an echoing crash that sent pigeons exploding from a nearby roof. "We need to go," Alice blurted, her voice thin. But Betsy couldn't move. Her feet were rooted to the pavement, eyes fixed on the chaos unfolding ahead. There was something in the very air, like the moment before a storm breaks, and threading through it all was a stench she recognized instantly. Bins, waste, something sweet and spoiled. "Oh, no," Brandon breathed. "Oh, no! Oh, no!" The crowd parted. Something huge moved at its center, an indeterminate black mass, fabric perhaps, or shadow. But then it shifted, and Betsy knew what it was. A body swollen far beyond human proportions, wrapped in layers of dark material that dragged and snagged along the ground. Black bin bags were woven into it, knotted together like crude armor, their contents bulging and sagging obscenely. It was the bag lady, or at least what the old woman had become. The creature towered above the dispersing crowd, its strange head brushing the hanging sign of the Howard Carter Pharmacy. Its arms were grotesquely long, hands enormous, fingers thick as sausages. Where its face should have been was something mask-like and rigid, smooth, pale, with the thick glasses still perched absurdly on its nose. Behind them, its deep-set eyes glinted mysteriously. Then Betsy saw its mouth, but it had ceased to be a mouth. It was a vast, gaping maw that opened and closed as the thing shuffled forward, wet and dark, rimmed with teeth, yellow and uneven. "Rats," the creature intoned, its voice no longer thin or distant, but booming and warped, vibrating in Betsy's chest. "Rats in the bag." A woman screamed as a giant hand closed around her arm. There was a sickening crack, bones snapping like dry wood, and the woman was plucked from the ground. People scattered in every direction, some tripping, some dropping bags and coats in their haste to escape. The bag lady lifted the poor woman with terrifying ease and dragged her towards that yawning mouth. There was a brief, awful moment when the woman's face was brightly lit by the headlights of a passing car, bulging wide, lips parted, before she vanished into what can only be described as a monstrous cavern. The sounds that followed were unbearable. Rose gagged. Brandon doubled over, retching. Alan, finding his voice at last, yelled, "Come on! Come on!" He clutched at his staring friends as the bag lady roared, an inhuman screech that rattled windows and set off car alarms. The children ran. Somewhere behind them, another horrifying scream was prematurely stifled. Sirens wailed in the distance. Like sheep driven into a pen, the group crammed themselves into a ginnel between the greengrocers and a derelict building. "What do we do?" Rose sobbed. "We've got to get out of here," Alan yelled. The children took turns peeking out of the ginnel, watching the madness unfold from their questionable hiding place. A police car screeched onto the road, lights blazing. An officer leapt out, shouting into a radio, his face ashen. "Off the street!" he bellowed, waving people away. "Everybody, off the street!" The bag lady edged forward along the emptying road, squeezing between parked cars, leaving dents and shattered mirrors in its wake. Betsy's mind raced. The canal. It was nearby, hidden behind the shops, accessible by means of another passage not too far from where they stood. She wasn't keen on the idea of the dark, stagnant water, the recent repository of a dead body, but anything was better than remaining where they were. "This way!" she shouted. Without waiting to see if her friends even heard her, she took off, back onto Market Street and along the chaotic stretch between their temporary hiding place and the looming black mass that was hurtling towards them. The desired gunnel was barely wide enough for two people abreast, bins stacked high on either side. Betsy, followed at last by her friends, dashed through it mindlessly. The canal lay before them, black and sluggish, a thin layer of ice still clinging to its surface. They ran along the towpath, shoes slipping on damp stone. Somewhere behind them, the bag lady bellowed again. Had she abandoned the busy high street? "She's following us," Rose screamed. "No way," Betsy yelled, though her lungs burned and her legs threatened to buckle. Ahead, the path dipped beneath a low bridge. Shadows pooled there, thick and concealing. The children plunged into darkness, just as something enormous crashed down onto the towpath behind them. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground, knocking Brandon off his feet. He cried out as Alan dragged him up again, hauling him onwards. Under the bridge, the air was colder, the stench of the canal overpowering. The bag lady's terrible voice rolled after them. "What's in the bag?" Betsy's chest tightened. She thought of the empty drum in the cellar. The proximity of the bag lady called it to mind. Why was that? Exposing herself to the drum had made her aware of something, made them all aware. But none were able to speak of what it was right then, cowered as they were in the gloom of the bridge, listening to the awkward, heavy footfalls of the Market Street monster. "We need to keep moving," Betsy announced, and up they leapt. They burst back out into the open beyond the bridge, skidding to a stop as the towpath met a passage leading up to Buckingham. "There!" Alice panted. But before they could move, the bag lady emerged from under the bridge. There in the twilight, Betsy could see the seams in its black dress, hand-stitched and crude, struggling to contain the bulk beneath. Its glasses hung crookedly from its mask-like face now, lenses cracked and filthy. The children were glued to the spot, rabbits in the headlights. But the bag lady hardly noticed them. It turned to the bridge, laid its swollen hands on the old stones. Like a monstrous spider or some bloated black lizard, it scrambled up the wall, the sound of rustling plastic reverberating across the icy surface of the canal. Moments later, it reached the top and shuffled away into the gloom above. The children had seen enough. They ran. They didn't stop until Buckingham rose up ahead of them, the familiar shapes of the terraces cutting through the night. They collapsed onto the grass by the no ball game sign, gasping, shaking, horrified. Sirens filled the air. Flashing blue lights danced across the murky sky. Betsy stared at number 44 across the way, its immaculate garden much like a mask, a veneer concealing infection and decay. Whatever had lived there, whatever had grown there, was loose now, and Lowther would never be the same again.